Welcome, everyone. It is 5:15 on Thursday, February 1st, 2018, and the Carroll City Council meeting is now in session. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm good. Please note everyone's in attendance. And our first item this evening is a resolution and the appointment of an attorney for labor and employment services. And Mike.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At our last meeting, we had Mike Galloway from Allers Cooney here that did a short presentation about the firm. Since we did not have the proposal in the packet, we did ask Council to table to this evening. That was included in the packet. I guess at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the proposal from them.
I think it was great to see their representative on Monday, and looks like a great firm to move forward with.
Yeah, it looked like the experience through here was really good. Are there any questions for Mike? Not, I'll need a motion to approve the resolution appointing Allers and Cooney PC as the labor and employment services attorney for the city of Carroll.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Dirk?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Kotz?
Yes.
Bass? Yes. Fleshner?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. We will now move to reports and continue our budget work session. And Greg, please, from the Airport Commission is here to present, and thank you.
I'm Greg Seaman, and I'm with the Carroll Airport Commission. And of course, I have our budget to talk about tonight, but I have several other items that the council should be aware of. First of all, I assume everyone's looked at our budget. Does anyone have any questions about that? We have just completed a major project. If you've been out at the airport, you'll notice that we've gone away from the two 12-foot wide 1947 entrance driveways. They've been consolidated in one 24-foot wide central driveway.
Just kind of make one comment because I see everyone paging. They're under tab G, and it'd be page 86. Sorry. Everyone's shuffling looking for that.
That's quite all right.
Thanks. I couldn't find my.
Now, that, I want to talk about that driveway a little bit. That driveway went, so to speak, over budget. And the reason it did significantly, let's just use a round number of $75,000. The reason it did is when we got the grant to do the driveway, and the grant was 2 years of our airport improvement funds for fiscal year 2016 and federal 2016, 2017. And that grant, those funds were $300,000. We were very concerned about our driveway and what we were going to do about it because it has, with our heavy truck usage, due principally for our agricultural spraying operations, the driveways, the way they were configured in 1947, were simply no longer working. The problem with the budgeting for that driveway project is the federal government would not fund the lighting portion of that contract. We had intended to do a federal project for the driveway and then a state project for the lighting. But the way it turned out, they were out of sequence with one another, and because of security concerns, we wanted to have that driveway entrance well lit, security and safety. Now, the safety concern's obvious. The security concern has to do with the fact that we're quite sensitive to the federal requirements for airports. And Carroll is not just a regular county airport. It is one of 4 enhanced service airports in western Iowa. What that means is that the Carroll Airport is the regional airport for west central Iowa. Carroll, the other three in western Iowa are Ames, Spencer, and Council Bluffs, with Sioux City and Fort Dodge being commercial service airports. Now, along with that designation, the FAA at one time wanted us to put a chain link fence all around the airport perimeter. We don't even know what that would have cost, but we talked them out of it. But we don't want to do anything to give the impression that we don't have a secure facility. We're just trying to do it more cheaply with having a well-lit facility, and then probably in our planning 2 to 3 years down the road, we're going to install a security camera process to, and all not only for security, but we want to avoid an expensive fencing project that'll be a bear to maintain. So that's why our concern and we went ahead and did the lighting project along with the driveway project so that we wouldn't have security concerns to address with the FAA. Now, the result of that is we have no state grant funds available for the lighting portion of the contract, and we're about, just if you round it off, about $75,000 over budget on that whole deal. But it turned out rather well, and we're pleased that we went ahead and did everything that we did. Now, a certain amount of that deficiency I have requested from the FAA out of the 2018 federal budget, which funds will not be available until after October 1st of 2018. The FAA originally said, in view of the situation we're in, that they put $30,000 of the 2018 airport improvement funds on the table for us. They've upped that since to 45, and I've been talking to them about just clearing up the whole deficiency out of the airport improvement funds that will become available after October 1st of 2018. So there may be a light at the end of the tunnel after all for this, but I can't bank on that other than the 45,000 that they said they would help us with.
Do you have a way to make up the difference?
I'm sorry?
Is there a way to make up the difference if you don't? Will the city have to absorb that?
The city would have to absorb that
Okay.
if I don't. Now, they had two alternatives. My alternative was to go to the 2018 airport improvement funds, which will mean that our next project may get pushed out
back
a year later
Okay.
than we planned on, but that's okay. And the other thing that they offered, they said they wanted to take a look at where they're at with projects. Now, when Carroll has been offered money to do a project, we've always taken the money and we've done the project. And as a result, what you see out there is a airport much more enhanced than would be normally for a town this size. But if we didn't do that, that regional airport would have gone 30 miles west of here. That was the original playbook for the FAA. And we spent a considerable amount of effort 30 years ago getting that whole situation straightened out so that we would be the regional airport and not Denison. Anyway, we're very pleased about how that all worked out in Carroll's favor 30 years ago when we really started promoting our airport as the regional airport for west central Iowa. But we've got an airport that is busier than all of the airports in all of the counties around us combined. There are more flying activity out here than there is at all the rest of the airports combined. Now, in addition, if because of our big runway, 5,500 feet by 100 feet, anybody doing business using a corporate jet who's going to Denison, Sac City, Rockwell City, Jefferson, Audubon, they come to Carroll. And that's where we've got our turbine aircraft activity up to more than one a day, about 1.7 or 1.8 a day.
And they have full service out there?
We have
for
full,
refueling and everything?
we have full service out there. We have single point refueling for jet aircraft. We have, of course, regular over-the-wing refueling for jet aircraft, plus 100 octane low lead. Plus we have the services of twin engine, all-weather part, what's called FAA Part 135, licensed chartered air taxi service. And he is flying several days a week. That's become, one of the things that's become very important for the community is a lot of people suffering from serious diseases are going to Rochester, Minnesota for treatment, and they're ill. And there's been a lot of air taxi service used out of the Carroll Airport with our operators' aircraft with ill people getting chemotherapy or radiation treatment at Rochester when they're in a situation where they'd just be too sick to drive for 4.5 hours. 45-minute airplane flight works a lot better. So we're happy to be able to provide that level of service to the community because there isn't much of that kind of service available anymore in small town Iowa outside of Des Moines or Omaha.
Hey Greg, just out of curiosity, if there's a aircraft mechanic needed or anything, is there one in the area? Or?
Absolutely. We've made arrangements, and Don Minson has made arrangements to work closely with Hinman Aviation in Webster City, Iowa. So he's about an hour drive away. So when people have a maintenance problem right here, that aviation facility has a working relationship with Don, and they put somebody in a pickup and they're down here, and it's an hour's drive, and it's worked out very well because it's very hard to have the air taxi service. We concentrate on that. And our secondary concentration is on flight training and our agricultural operations out there. And I might add that was probably the big driver for going to one main driveway entrance that's 24 foot wide because the semis coming in and out of there, it was just tough with that old driveway. So anyway, any questions about that driveway project? It's for the most part complete, other than some grass seeding that'll be done this spring. And we're also we have plans when our budget works to erect an appropriate sign out there for the Arthur M. New Airport. And no, we're not changing the name of the airport. The FAA wanted us to talk about the West Central Iowa Regional Airport, and we're not going to do that. So I want to bring you up to date also. Are there any questions about that? I'll be happy to answer.
Just a couple. Do I understand that the lighting project is completed also?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So what you see if you go out there
If I went out there
will be
now, I'd
what you
see
get,
it done.
except for the grass
Right.
seeding and except for the sign eventually. But we're going to wait and do that sign when our budget permits because we're over budget as a result of doing these projects together. In addition, I want to tell you and I want to report on where we're at litigation-wise. I'm sure that many of you heard and many of you have read about the litigation we're involved with what we call the Danner Grain Lake, which is immediately south of the airport. The erection of that Danner Grain Lake was done with no notice to the Airport Commission whatsoever. The building permit was was issued by mistake. The construction was commenced, and that whole grain leg was erected in a matter of a few days. At a time, just out of coincidence, Don was gone in eastern Iowa. And when we realized it, we tried to get the matter resolved outside of litigation. We couldn't do that. And it's important for you to know that every grant that we have had out at that airport is subject to our enforcement of our zoning regulations. The problem is that grain leg exceeds the zoning ordinances by 61 feet. Now that sounds like it's not a big deal, but the problem is its proximity to the airport, and the fact is that it's 127 feet tall and sits on an 87-foot tall hill. It makes that grain leg well more than 200 feet above the surface of the airport runway, but it doesn't, because it's less than 200 feet above the ground, it doesn't appear on any aviation charts. We're very concerned about the liability that the city would have if we made any deal. Two things: we're worried about liability, and we're worried about our grants. We were told by the FAA that needs to be fixed, and your future grants are in jeopardy if it isn't fixed. So we had very little choice but to take it to litigation. I'm happy to report that our initial trial on the zoning violations we were successful at, and that has been it is now on appeal to the Iowa Supreme Court, and I would expect that we will be successful there as well. And there is, starting May 1st, there will be a $200 a day penalty assessed for each day that structure remains at its present height. In addition, in less than 2 weeks, on February 15th, there will be another trial in Carroll District Court on Mr. Danner's appeal from a decision of the Carroll County Board of Adjustment. He asked the Carroll County Board of Adjustment for a zoning variance, and they did not give him one. And that will go to trial on an appeal of that administrative decision on February 15th. We expect to be successful in that case as well. But the problem is, and I come back to where we're at with our budget, the problem is our attorney fees at right now, and that doesn't mean anybody on the airport commission is charging anything. That just means outside counsel, and we've been very pleased with our representation from New Mini, Comito, and New, and specifically Jeff Mennick, with assistance from Gina Bating on the briefing. We've been very pleased with their work, but those bills are over slightly over $30,000 at the present time, and we know we will incur more expense. Unfortunately. So and I might add that because we've undertaken litigation to protect the airport zoning, the FAA is quite satisfied with what we've done. We fulfilled all of our contractual obligations to the FAA, so they're not going to cut off our funding or grants in the future. I might just add one more thing. Going down the road, we have 3 projects lined up for future funding if they aren't pushed out because of our over budget on this project. And one would be, our next project will be in the 2021 construction year, and 2020 construction year, and that will be a crack and seal maintenance on the crosswind runway 321. The year after that, we are going to discuss if the technology we feel is appropriate at the cost of the technology, we'll convert all of our runway and taxiway lighting to LED. And then 2 years after that, we'll probably seek a federal grant to update our airport master plan, because the old one is over 20 years old. And that is, future funding is also dependent on having an updated airport master plan. So, any questions? I'll be happy to answer anything anybody wants to talk about.
I'm good.
Okay, well, I'm
You
happy to
guys have done
report-
such a great job with the airport. I think we trust that you will follow through and keep doing
Okay,
the
we
job you're
plan,
doing.
we plan to, and I can
Yep.
report to you that your airport and your airport commission is in good hands, no problems.
Thank you very
Okay,
much,
thank
Greg.
you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
So who drew the short straw for the next one?
Wardell, wasn't it?
Was it Jack?
Oh, Jack.
Jack, are you ready? Or do you want to go there? All right, Jack, you're up, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Tonight, page 99 is where Parks and Rec starts. We'll go over parks and open spaces, the golf course, recreation center, leisure services, aquatic center.
Jack, you want to go to the summary page instead?
Yeah.
Okay. And I have them, I guess I didn't pull those out of
They
the
start
book.
under tab E on page 43.
For you. Nope, I got it.
We're changing you up today.
Sorry.
Sorry, Jack, thank you.
That's
Yep.
fine.
Revenue in the parks and open spaces is shelter houses. Sometimes we'll get donations for small projects, trees, benches, different things like that. But the one we really look at is the shelter houses. We raised the rates a few years ago, but we're kind of happy with the prices where we're at. We don't feel like we need to go up any higher at that point. Expense-wise, it's always broken down personnel expenses, commodities, and capital improvements. The expenses, personnel services went up just a little bit, a little over $1,000. We have one retirement coming now, and we'll hire a new person. They won't start at the top of the range, so we'll save a little money there. Services, commodities, that is down quite a bit. Tree service, the emerald ash borer, we had money budgeted, we carried $75,000, so we have $150,000 in that budget right now. We will carry that over if we need to. And once the emerald ash borer is detected in the county, then we'll jump forward and start looking in the parks and city properties to begin with and start removal. We know which trees they are now, and once they are established about 30 to 40% dead is when you start taking them out. So we will start doing that process shortly, but I mean, we have sufficient money to get us started, get the ball rolling, and take out those trees when we have that. And then the capital outlay is $14,000, which is just a utility tractor. It's time to upgrade that. This is going off our recommendation of our superintendent, who is very frugal, holds on to things for a very long time. So it's time to upgrade the tractor. So that's really parks and open spaces that we have for next year.
How many trees are you looking at?
780.
Wow.
Do we know where they all are already?
Yep.
Jack, okay.
Yep. With the
That's it.
assistance of Public Works Department, that department and us went out and looked, we know the right-of-way and the street right-of-ways, the parks, the golf course. We got a good handle on it. We have a map through Public Works, and Carrie promised we got that achieved, so we know. And we have, if cemetery, we've taken out some, and golf course, we've taken out a few of them. So. But there, we have a plan. It's just too expensive to try to save them. And once you start that maintenance, it's yearly or every other year. And it's several $100s per application. So it's not inexpensive.
I think we had decided a while back just to take them out. I thought that was
Yeah.
easier.
Yep. And we'll continue to do that. The ones that we feel the department safely can, with the equipment we have and the training we have, we'll take out those. Much larger ones we'll have to contract out.
Do we have a plan in place to replace those with another variety at all? Or are there some that, I mean, it seems to me that many trees, there's some bare spots that
Yeah.
30 years from now, we might regret not putting something in, or?
Yeah, we will. We'll have quite a variety of trees. We won't concentrate on one area. There's,
Isn't that tree farm down there by Graham Park? Isn't that
Yep.
where you're harvesting from? They're
Yep.
sitting down in there, yeah.
yep. And we'll probably have to purchase quite a bit too.
Okay.
So we'll tack.
You know, sometimes Alliant has those programs that you can buy.
Yep.
You know, as a customer, I get emails from them about, you can purchase trees from them at a reduced price.
Yep.
Too.
Yes, they're
Like $25, I think, on some.
Alliant and Mid-American both have that.
Alliant does, yeah.
Yep. Yes. We're aware of that, and
Okay,
we'll take on that challenge when we
get
get the
there.
other ones removed. And to be honest, you know, we have a very knowledgeable staff, and they'll strategically plan this process. You know, there's quite a few areas where we're over areaed with trees, so some of these will be taken out and it'll look nice. It won't be so overgrown and everything like that, so.
We have the equipment to take them out?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we have a tree spade in the current budget. We have money in there to buy a used one, and we're holding on to it till this one no longer will work. So again, that's how we usually do things. We wait till it's broke. And we
I don't
can't
know
do
if
it
there's much of
anymore.
an aftermarket on those machines anyway.
What's that?
There isn't probably much of an aftermarket
No.
on those tree machines anyway.
Said mostly podiatrists from Carroll, Iowa buying them. And Dr. Williams wasn't looking for one.
Never know when that ravaging corn will show up.
Anything else with the parks? Again, it's 4 full-time employees, and then during the summer, we average 4 to 6 part-time staff to help with mowing and baseball, softball fields, soccer fields. We have over 120 acres just in the parks, and then another 80 acres of special areas, fire station, some of the other city hall that they work on. So, very good job. Golf course. Revenue, we kept that the same. It varies a little bit depending on weather. Weather's a big part of it. If you have a really wet spring, really hot summer, those numbers fluctuate a little bit, but we have a pretty good idea where we're going to be at. Personnel expenses, again, those are going up. We'll have another employee that's new that'll get a 5% raise in his STEP program moving up. So that number's up a little bit. Services and commodities, fertilizer, gas, you know, we try as best we can to guess where gas prices are going to be. So we do have a little bit of a cushion to make sure that we're not asking for money or we go over the line item. But that's the services and commodities. And the capital outlay, we have $85,000 in this budget, and we're looking at replacing the fairway mower, a greens brusher. When we go out, one of the concerns the golfers has when we aerate the greens, we come back with some sand to fill those holes so they're not so obvious. And then when we're done with that, in the past, we leave that, and we've seen a new technique where they bring this brush on the greens, and we'll pick up the excess sand and really clean it up so the sand is in the holes and it's not all over the green. And Scott Hawkinson brought me out one day, and you could just see one green when it wasn't done and the other green. And it's a nice addition. The golfers really like it, and it'll help. And that's $5,000. A cold storage unit, he's run out of space. We've taken over the garage in between the clubhouse and his garage, more and more. That's usually used for the cart storage during the winter. When the golf course closes, H&H Sports takes them, changes spark plugs, does all the maintenance, but when they're done, they go back out to the garage. And Scott in the golf course has needed that storage, so we're trying to find other things for the golf carts. So it'd be nice to get a small, we're looking about a 15 by 20, 20 by 20, not a real big area. It's not going to be very fancy. Obviously, at $25,000, it's just cold storage. It's not going to be heated. There'll be a couple plugs here and there, but it's not going to be anything fancy. And that would be just to the north of the his maintenance garage now. So,
How big, I'm sorry, how big of a,
and I didn't bring that. I want to say it was like 15 by 20 by 20.
sometimes you can get some of those like from Lowe's or Menards, they show those on their flyers, you can sometimes get those for $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you do shopping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look at, and this was an estimate,
Okay.
and we added a little extra to that just to be safe, but yeah.
You gonna put a cement pad underneath there,
Yes.
you think? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then just an exhaust fan, we don't have one currently, and we need to get that in the facility, so.
Which facility is that going, that's going in your maintenance facility,
In
Jim?
the Gulf, yep. So that's the 85,000 in capital, those items. The current budget, we just have a mower, a used greens mower, and a sprayer that we're buying this year, as a reminder. You've seen some of those purchases already. No additional staff, no additional part-time staff. We got a pretty good system, and we know what hours they need help with, and we usually pull our part-time staff on Wednesdays, it's Seniors Day, and they take over the entire course. We really can't do much. So that's a good day to bring the mowers in and the equipment to sharpen blades, change oil, fill tires on Wednesday afternoons. And so usually the part-time staff leaves, so they're usually about 36 hours a week. Rec Center, is there already? Rec Center, the revenue sources are memberships and rentals, daily admission, concessions, lockers. So we anticipate being right around the 390 to 400,000 in that line. Now, personnel expenses are going up. Some of
Excuse
that.
me, Jack, before you drop down there, what the other rec center revenue, what's the change there?
11,000, usually we'll get donations, or I think that was maybe a grant that we got that had the revenue up, wasn't it?
Actually, I think that was
The,
a light rebate. When we switched out all the lights to the American rebate, that's probably the bulk of it. It may not be all of it, but I'm guessing that's the bulk of it.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
yep. Expenses, personnel expenses, that line is going up a little bit more than usual. In the past, we had contract services for our nighttime cleaning staff, where we just paid, we would go with ASI, and they would hire the staff, they bring them in, and they manage them. And it's been tough trying to find staff that doesn't want, they want different items and different things. And so they really struggled. We went out and tried to find a couple extra people, and we were able to do that. We got a good nighttime staff right now. They generally work 6 hours a night. They'll come in right about close or an hour before close. They hit the gym, hit the locker rooms, the weight room, and the hallways. They do a lot of that work. And so we've taken it out of the services and commodities under the line item, one of the line items there, and brought it up to the personnel expenses. So that's where you see some of that expense. And then Under the services and commodities, we do have an increase. We had to raise electricity a little bit. We didn't do that last year. We saw that in the line item. We need to increase that. And just under repair and maintenance this year, we want to try to do some additional things. The Andy we got some valves that need to be replaced for the pool area. And what we haven't done ever was we've gone in periodically and stripped the hallway floors and done some what I would call light maintenance on them over the years. This year, we were estimating about $25,000 out of that line item to strip the floor completely, take it down to the cement level, and then build it back up and make it shiny and clean it really well. So that's one of the bigger expenses in that line item this year that we're trying to add that we feel is important. The hallways, we run the machines over them every night, but it's just time to strip them down to the bare concrete and build them back up. So that'll be quite a process. We'll have to be closed. In the past, we've on some of the summers, usually early in August, we'll close for a couple days and do maintenance, and this will be one of those days. So we'll advertise 60 days before, probably the first week in August. There's a lot of families and a lot of people on vacations, taking those last vacations, so our numbers are down with daily admission and just usage in general those few weeks. So we'll look at doing that. We'll look at closing the pool and just doing a heavy maintenance for for a few days. We have done this in the past, so we'll look at doing that.
Jack, when you switched the lights out, I was expecting our electricity bill would go down, and it did not. Is that
No.
accurate?
No, it did stay.
Didn't make a dent?
I'm sure that portion did, but we had a rate increase last year. So that was some of it.
Ate up the savings.
Mid-America made up the difference.
Yeah. So, yeah, because we had been 75,000, 79,000, and last year was 83,000. So,
Well, it'd be interesting to see the kilowatt hour use
yeah,
before and after.
we can
Did you
figure
ever
that
look-
out.
I'd kind of be curious
Okay,
if you could tell. I'm just wondering if those lights made a difference. They're supposed to.
sure, yeah. Okay, yep, I'll find that out. Okay. And then capital is 133,000 out of that line item. The things we're looking at doing is getting a new, we bought a new auto scrubber for the hallways, but we use one in the locker rooms, a smaller one, because we want to get between the benches, between the lockers and the benches, and we need a smaller one in there. So we're looking at purchasing that. We're looking at, we have, if I say this right, we have 7 AC air unit controls upstairs. We have a new one that's outside on the rooftop that controls the weight room. If you remember, we had a change order when we were doing the weight room project. All of a sudden we realized there's no air. We put an air top unit up on the ceiling. And so there's 7 on the inside, and the one that Andy and staff is recommending is the HVAC unit number 2, which does the offices, the activities room, and the 2 rooms down the hallway. Basically the west side minus the theater. Theater is its own unit, one of those 7 units. So we want to start attacking those units because we're about 40 years old. So I think we want to just be aggressive and tackle these projects before they become a problem. And that's what we have 50,000 for. 25,000 for new fitness equipment. We're always looking to swap out treadmills, ellipticals with the older machines. Get rid of them before they become a problem. We have 25,000 for that. Some additional cameras. We need another 1 or 2 in the gym. We have ones if you walk into the gym, right where the door is, main door, there's a camera there. Then there's another camera on the other doors, and we're missing a few spots. So we want to probably put a grand eye in the middle of it, and so you can kind of see everything that direction too. Why it wasn't done that way initially, we went off some recommendations, and I think we just want to go back and try to make sure we get some areas that we see. And there's just a few other areas that we're looking at. We'll mention this to you when we get a little bit closer. We sit down and plan out strategically what we're going to do with some of the cameras, weight rooms, and things like that. So we'll do that. And then we have money for new flooring down below. If you walk in there, we have basically 4x8 mats. The edges are starting to wear. They're not staying put together very well. They're getting dust and dirt in between them. And we want to just replace that whole area with what's upstairs. You've been upstairs, it's the roll rubber matting. We want to do that down below. And that's a lot easier to clean. You're not, Bob and the staff's not trying to knock them back together so we don't have those little gaps. And so then that's $45,000. So that brings us to the $133,000 for the rec center. Quite a few projects to take on, but we have a great staff who will make this happen. Any questions on the rec center? Okay, leisure services, these are programs, all of our programs, including some of the programs at the rec center, fitness classes, those are all out of leisure services. We don't run those to the rec center. So the instructors and the revenue are both in leisure services. So we anticipate a little increase on some of the personnel services, and commodities. We're looking at keeping that the same. And then $5,000 would be for portable hoops when we're trying to run some of the programs at our location. We want to be able to lower the hoops and maybe get a few more basketball hoops than what we're doing now when we have the larger number of the kids or participants in the programs. So we're looking at possibly two to four of these portable hoops that will be a nice addition for our programming purposes. Really, that's all with leisure services. Again, that's down at the rec center, the Mike Murtis, the program specialist, Pam, who works in the main office, are both out of that fund. 15% of my salary comes out of leisure services. So that's why you look at personnel expenses, that's what's coming out of there.
Hey Jeff, it looks like the revenues are going down in there. Do we know why? I mean, because it seems like a lot of people are signing up for programs.
Yeah. We discontinued doing the after-school program, and that's the main one, the before and after-school program. We took that out about 10 years ago because we had groups really weren't being able to find enough daycare in the area, and so we would average about 20 to 30 kids in the program. And then when there's a couple additional school programs that came on board, that we really saw our numbers drop to about 10, between 8 and 12. And so we held on to it for about a year to make sure those families had a chance to find alternative programs. So, and they did, so we were able to eliminate the program.
I guess I was just looking between 15, 16 and 16, 17.
Yep. Yeah, those would generate about 25, 30,000 just for that program. Any other questions with that? Aquatic Center. Our revenues, admissions, memberships, a few pool rentals. We'll get about 6 to 8 pool parties during the summer. Those are $225 to $275 for a 2-hour stint. So that we really don't see a lot of change. Concessions was the other area. We average about 126, 120 to 130,000 in revenue. Expenses are starting to creep up more and more. We're getting close to being a 10-year-old facility, so you'll see services, commodities, and some of the capital things that we need to do start coming up. So that's what you see in some of the expenses. Specifically, you need the pool has about 6 to 7 different motors that runs the pool, 6 for the main pool, and then there's a separate motor for the slides. And we're being proactive. We're starting to replace some of these motors. They're about 5,000 a piece. So that's what we're doing. Replacing one of the motors. The lily pads, they're 10 years old, continuous use. That's one of the busiest areas. They're wore out, so we need to look at replacing them. We brought them in the winter, patched them, and tried to get as much life out of them. But that's definitely probably the #1 area that the kids and people go to. They really like that area of the pool. So they're not cheap. I think there's 11 of them, 10 or 11 of them. So they're a couple thousand a piece. And then the pool heater, it works. But it's 10 years old. We know that it's not going to last much longer. So, and we'll get a new one put in, and hopefully that'll be a more energy efficient one too, and we'll save a little money on the electricity hopefully when we do that. But we'll start up this one, get her running, and the budget will be in July, and then we'll determine then. We'll trust Andy's knowledge if we look at replacing it in July or try to get through the season. And,
Is that something you could do like at the end of the season if you wanted to?
absolutely.
Also.
Yep, that's what I mean. I think I'll go off his recommendation. He'll be checking it daily, and he
Okay.
knows. And if something happens that it's a $500 repair, we'll probably repair it. But if it's a $3,000 or $4,000 repair,
Then replace it.
replace it. So that really determine what we do.
The motor and the heaters and stuff like that, when you add new ones, what do you do with the old ones?
Usually that the company takes them. That's part of their bid, as they get them. And it's in some cases, I guess we did talk today. Maybe you send one in and get it refurbished, so you have an extra one on hand.
Yeah.
That's something we can do too.
Is that a refurb one that you're getting, is it a new?
It'll be a new one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering when you said they take them back, if they're refurbishing them and then selling them to
They
us or
could.
not.
Yeah. But this one, we did have that, and I'm sorry, Andy and I did have that conversation about refurbishing it, getting it repaired, to make sure if we need to pop one out, that's nice to have the extra one on hand. Yes. Cemetery. Our revenue graded opening and closings and sale of lots really is the two big things that we have in that revenue source. Expenses will have a little bit of increase. We've really tried to be aggressive, really in all the departments, to get our part-time staff up to $11, $12 an hour to be competitive in the community. 4 or 5 years ago, we were $8.75, $9. We struggled. We had people tell us that they could go other places. So you're going to see a lot of our part-time staff making $10.50, $11, $11.50, depending on their experience. So you'll see that increase. Services and commodities is down just a little bit. And then our capital, right now we have money in the budget for the cemetery software program. Mike and I met today with a potential business that could provide that service to us. We'll have a proposal to you hopefully in the next couple weeks with a recommendation from us. And then, so that will be the $15,000. Doesn't look like we will have to spend that amount. But then the $9,000 in capital is for a new cart, similar to a golf cart, but just with a flatbed on the back or a storage area that you can put dirt. It's nice when you're in the cemetery, you get low spots around the graves. You can put, some dirt back there and then take it out to the site. And this one we hope we'll be able to lift up. We won't have to lift it manually and service the area. The one that's in the cemetery, was here long before I started, so it's time to upgrade that. That's really all we have in the cemetery this year.
Is that budget, are you trading the old one or just
Yeah,
disposing it?
we'll trade that one in.
Okay, so that's your trade difference on.
Yeah, yeah. So we should get some. And that was a recommendation. I had talked to someone and told them kind of what we wanted, and that was the number they gave me. So I just found this interesting. I know obviously doing these main budgets, things really fluctuate, but those 6 departments, 2018 is 2.7 million, and the 2019, what we proposed to use at 2.5 million. So reduction of 142,000. So just to let you know. Yep.
I have out-of-town people have a hard time knowing where the cemetery office is. It's not,
Yeah.
there's no sign or anything.
I'll get that. I was thinking about that yesterday. Mike mentioned that to me, and I'll get a couple options. One to put something right on the building, and then one, in the grassed area out by the parking lot. So we'll get something. My idea is, if you've seen the lettering out on the golf course clubhouse, it's a thin black lettering, looks really nice. Might see if we can do something on that. The cemetery, or make another sign that you see, the T signs, those green and tan plastic signs. We'll look at one of those 2 options. So.
Is that it?
A lot of unless you had.
Any other questions for Jack? Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
You have something else?
No.
Okay.
I just want to mention, I'm glad you don't defer things, then you have bigger problems. You're staying ahead of problems, Jack, that came throughout your, thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to have a community that we can do that.
Yes.
We've been good, and everyone here does a good job of being able to do that.
Randy, would you like to be next?
I would.
Okay.
I would ask you begin on page 38 in that tab C is the general fund portion of the public works budget. It is kind of an aggregation of everything in our public works that's funded by the general fund, and that'll include street construction, road maintenance, street lighting, traffic services, public works admin, city garage, central business district, and streets transfer that we'll explain later. So those are all together. They're not separate. This is aggregated. We did address one of your 3 new priorities, revisitation of the traffic signal situation. That revisit is funded in this part of the budget. Beginning with the revenue, there's quite a bit of difference between the current revenue reestimate and the proposed budget. That is primarily that streetlight rebate that the city received from Mid-American Energy. The way that's being handled is it's credited as a revenue, and then it's expended during the year for street lighting. So that's what it is. Personnel services, in this part of the budget, we have 1.9 full-time equivalent people, 1 full-time equipment mechanic at the maintenance garage, and then 30% of the salaries of our engineering tech, secretary, and myself. So 30% of our salaries funded from the general fund. Capital outlay, we're expecting just the same as the current year. That is pedestrian curb ramps. We budgeted for a number of years, and the expenditure under that item is usually the purchase of detectable warning panels. There, in those panels, we use, our personnel use them when they build head ramps and we also sell them to contractors to use. Unfortunately, when you try to buy just 2 detectable warning panels, the price is kind of high, but we buy them by the pallet, so our contractors in town that build a few sidewalks a year can get a little bit of break on those detectable warning panels. And then we have one selected that we've decided works better than any other, and so that's the one we purchase and require to be used. The other is mapping. That's just software maintenance for some of our mapping system. Transfers, I mentioned before, there's $175,000 included in transfer from the general fund to other parts of the budget. One of those is to capital projects, streets, in the amount of $50,000 for that sidewalk transition plan. So that's advancing the construction of pedestrian curb ramps per plan. The other $125,000 was originally put in the budget for the gateway entry features. You've made a decision not to fund that. That will probably end up in the street maintenance garage revenue line. And that's also in capital projects under street maintenance garage. We'll get to that in a few minutes. So other than that, there isn't much else in the general fund in public works, unless there's any questions. Unless you have any questions, we move forward. The next is road use tax, and that begins on page 61 under that same tab E. Of course, this is the expenditure of the road use tax fund, road use tax funding that we receive from the state. And this budget in road use includes, it's again aggregated for the entire fund, and it includes road maintenance, snow removal, street cleaning, administration, and then some transfers again to other parts of the budget. The initiatives that are included in this part of the budget include a pavement management system, 3rd Street resurfacing, which is a resurfacing of 3rd Street west of Highway 71. We did all of 3rd Street east within the last 2 years. This is a county project. There is a short section of that street, or that mile, within the corporate limits, and the county has asked that the city participate in that project. So that's included in proposed in this budget. Salt brine handling equipment, our equipment at the maintenance garage does not meet OSHA standards. We do need to either use double wall tanks or protect that from spill. And this budget includes a proposal to do that. Now, this does not include salt brine manufacturing equipment. This is only storage. So that's at $50,000.
Is that like the rubber base you put around the outside of the tanks? Is that what that is, or?
Well, in all its practicality, it'll either be double wall tanks built that way,
Right.
or a concrete retaining walls. Because we'll be retaining 30,000 gallons probably, so it's significant. And we don't want 30,000 gallons going into the drain 77 either. So that's the proposal for that expenditure. And then street resurfacing, that's the transfer, $100,000 from road use tax to support the next street resurfacing project. And that's also addressing one of the ongoing goals of continued street maintenance in the city. Anyway, getting into the revenue road use tax will be projected at $1.22 million. That's about $121.50 per capita. So those per capita numbers are important to us. Certainly census is important to us. And any of you in the childbearing years keep it up so we can promote these tax funds.
Do your job.
So, it's a benefit.
I'm done.
Anyway,
Can't help you.
also, the other larger revenue source is a transfer into the road use tax fund from the employee benefits. And that takes care of all our, for all the employees that are paid out of this fund, the FICA benefits for that. And that's kind of a support to the fund. Because overall, you can see that the revenue generated, total revenue generated, without that employee benefits support is less than the total expenditure projected by a few $1,000s. So we're real close to operating this road maintenance out of the funding that we get, but it doesn't quite make it. And by using the employee benefit support, that additional money, which will be $134,000 next year, is, or almost 135, that rolls over to be used for capital, what I'd call capital maintenance, the support for the resurfacing projects. So that's kind of what it is. In personnel, we have projected 7.9 full-time equivalents, and that's 30% of our administration salaries, the three of us, and then a street superintendent and 6 municipal service workers. And that's what we currently have. Now, it's, the number is different from the 775 the current year, because I readjusted the percentages of our engineering tech and secretary and myself among the 4 funds that were paid from the general fund, road use tax, water, and sewer. So those we kind of rebalanced a little bit to try to accurately reflect where we're spending our time working. The capital outlay at $175,000, that includes that pavement management system I mentioned, the 3rd Street resurfacing, and the salt brine handling equipment. And then the transfer, that's the $100,000 into the capital projects fund to support the street resurfacing project for next year. And that results in a fund balance projected at the end of the next fiscal year of almost $1.5 million. So that the fund is in reasonable condition for what's projected to be spent. Any questions on the road use tax fund? Okay, if not,
Are you gonna get rid of a medium truck? Are you getting rid of a truck too? You got the, did you get rid of that truck? Or did you just add a truck?
no, we have trade. We have trade. Yeah, there's no proposal to increase the fleet.
Yeah, no, I was just looking back what you had done. I couldn't remember if you'd gotten rid of a truck and, or just bought one and added to it. Okay.
No.
Got it.
That's not proposed at this time. You know, it's something that's always in the back of your mind, whether you should increase your fleet.
Right.
But in order to do that, you increase personnel. But the driving force on that should be whether you believe you're providing a level of service that's acceptable to the community. And we haven't observed a large outcry from people that they want a higher level of service. If that happens, you may need to increase that level with additional staff and equipment. But we have not heard of that. Okay, the next portion of the budget is the capital projects, begins on page 63 in that tab E. This is the portion of the budget that covers most of our capital construction projects. During this next year, we anticipate, in general, US 30 and Grant Road improvements being funded from here, street resurfacing, streetscape phase 9, and implementing the street maintenance building. Those are all included in this part of the budget, They're all ongoing priorities of yours. And by the way, this is also a multiple area fund, but these are broken apart, and we'll go through each, the streets, the corridor of commerce, and the street maintenance building individually under this summary. So beginning with the streets, that's pretty much our street projects. The largest revenue is the other revenue, and that's transferred in from other funds, general fund, road use, stormwater utility, and local option sales tax. Those transfers from those funds would total the $875,000. Capital outlay at $855,000 includes, that does include the $125,000 that you had taken out from the quarter entry features. So that number will change when the final budget numbers are put together. And that 125 will go into another part of this capital fund, the street maintenance building. Fund balance expected at the end of this next fiscal year at about $400,000. The capital items that are included in there, of course, they are the sidewalk transition plan, the street rehab 18, this next year's street rehab, and then beginning design work for the following year's street rehabilitation project. Corridor of Commerce portion of this fund includes not only the Corridor of Commerce streetscape projects, but also the Grant Road US 30 project. And it's included in this part of the fund because it is in the TIF area, TIF district, and there is some tax increment financing in that project. The revenues for this portion of the fund include intergovernmental, which are our grants that we'd receive, state aid grants, one being Traffic Safety Improvement Fund and one being Urban State Traffic Engineering Program funding. They total, over the 2 years, they'll total $900,000. Other funding at $1.2 million is from the water utility, and that's the loan that's repaid to the water utility through tax increment collection. Capital outlay in this part of the fund are those three projects, the US 30 grant, Streetscape 9, and Streetscape 10 design. The fund balance that we're projecting at the end of the next fiscal year at $1.18 million, and that's primarily because we've included in this budget to capture the increment for the Streetscape Phase 10 in this next year's budget, even though the project wouldn't be constructed until the following year. So that's the way that this is structured. The street maintenance portion of this fund is for the building construction. Revenue this year from general fund and local option sales tax, as you reviewed in the capital improvement program. Added to that will be that $125,000 approximately from the quarter entry feature project. Fund balance then without the 125 is $2.29 million projected at the end of the next fiscal year. The expenditures projected in that part of the fund are for design of that street maintenance building. So we're proposing to fund that design work in the next fiscal year at $455,000. Are there any questions on that capital projects portion of the budget?
Randy, I got one question here. At the very top, underneath the request item, corridor entry features, it's got budget amount of $105,000. Should it be $125,000?
Well, no, it isn't.
Okay.
Actually, in your budget, the way it's laid out, is a total of 125, which was the projected cost of that project, but it's actually in the budget 20,000 this year to cover the design work, of which we've spent almost 13, and then 105 for next year. So technically, there's only 105 plus whatever isn't spent for design, unless it's funded from other dollars that are general fund available. And that's something that would be worked out for you at the, in the final budget numbers. So that's kind of the explanation of how that's, why that's 105. Any other questions? Okay. The next portion of the budget is the water utility funds. Page 68 is where they, in tab C is where, or E, excuse me, is where they begin. This water utility funds include not only the operational fund, but also a depreciation fund, capital improvement fund, and a meter deposit fund. And those are individually illustrated in this summary. Initiatives for next year in this portion of the fund include continuing the meter replacement, which is projected to pretty much be completed by the end of the next fiscal year. Continue fire hydrant replacements. Our personnel have found that they like to replace fire hydrants. So you'll see in this budget, there's a little increase proposed to purchase hydrants for installation by our water department personnel. They would sooner replace them than repair some of the old fire hydrants. And then begin water main replacement planning for that during the next fiscal year. And that is, that will help advance your goal of water distribution system study. The study would be completed, and the outcome of that will be probably some capital water main replacement ideas or needs. The water utility operating fund includes our administration work, water treatment plant operation, high service pump station operation, the wells, the distribution system. We fund some accounts and collections here, and we fund the GIS program here for a number of years. The water, the utility operation, the revenue in that, all revenue is included in there from our metered water sales. And the actual projection for metered water sales alone in that revenue item is $1.4 million. Our last water rate increase was in July of 17, and that was preceded by a rate increase probably 14 years before that. So our water rates have been pretty flat. We did increase last year in preparation for some of the capital projects that had been included in the capital improvement program. The other larger revenue is in other financing sources, and that is actually the TIF repayment for previous loans back into the water fund at $753,000. Personnel in the water fund, we do have 7.1 full-time equivalent personnel projected for next fiscal year. That's 20% of our administrative salaries here in City Hall. A water superintendent, 4 operators, and 1 municipal service worker, and then a half of the salary for the deputy city clerk is funded from this fund. Now that's down 1 person from the current approved budget. That 1 person is a GIS coordinator. We have funded the GIS portion of the water fund for a few years and not hired a coordinator. This budget proposes to take that personnel expenditure out and convert it over to a contract expenditure in GIS. Basically, the same dollars in that portion of the budget as currently approved, but converted from in-house personnel to contract labor. So it's a proposal. If you,
Did you feel that there was not enough for them to do?
No, I didn't. We've been thinking about this a lot. We've not taken the action on it to hire a person.
Oh, okay.
Probably long-term, I would say you would want that service performed in-house. But one of the real concerns is the level of expertise that you want to establish a GIS program. You know, you want a real high level of expertise to guide in the establishment of this GIS. But you don't necessarily want to pay for that high level of service, high level of expertise over the long haul for the maintenance of the system. So this looks at it a different way. It looks at it in contracting for that high level to establish this GIS, and then roll, the idea would be to roll into in-house personnel to help maintain that GIS system. So that's, it's just another, we knew this all along, and it's probably part of the reason we didn't hire the GIS coordinator right when it was first budgeted. And so this is another look at the process. You know, it's an important process, and we want to get it right. And then we want it to be sustainable. You know, it's to maintain it, and it has to be maintained in order to be usable in the long run.
Will you do you know some companies that are doing it and then offer some RFPs for that purpose? Okay.
Yes.
You intend to do that this year or?
This would be proposed for next
For
fiscal
next
year.
year, okay.
Okay. That's the personnel part. The capital outlay that we anticipate in the operations portion of this budget includes $20,000 for mains, and that includes the purchase of a few extra fire hydrants for our guys to install, and then $250,000 for water meter replacement. That's the purchase of meters. We do that replacement in-house, with in-house personnel.
So are you, fire hydrants, you're replacing some, and then also if you need new ones in the development areas, is that?
In the development areas, they're put in by the developers. They have been historically as part of those utility improvements.
Okay.
Randy, on the replacement, what's the cost equivalency of like the ones that have the lead paint that we have to special treat, blast and paint and everything else?
On the hydrants?
Yeah.
Well, it's quite a bit cheaper to blast them and paint them. It is expensive. It'll be probably $300 a piece to blast them and paint them. And that we do have to contract for what's remaining, and that's included in this budget also. A new fire hydrant, to purchase it, I think we're buying them at about $1,100 a piece right now. And then you've got the installation costs. So.
Greg, do you guys notice if there are issues with some of the hydrants that you let the water department know that maybe, hey, this one probably should be changed?
You guys keep very close tabs.
Close tabs on them.
Yeah,
anyway.
they service them, and I don't know if you'll resume flushing again, Randy, sometime, but, yeah, they pretty much take care of that, and we've, knock on wood, never had an issue with a hydrant when we needed one,
Never needed a metric wrench.
so, no. Or they're adjustable, probably.
The metric crescent.
Okay, let me see, next portion of the budget, of this water utility budget, is the depreciation fund. And that is a fund that was created to replace any equipment at the water treatment plant that may need replacement. It has received a transfer from the water utility fund of $50,000 per year. We did use it for that major filter rehab project here a couple of years ago, but it is anticipated to have a balance of about $827,000 at the end of next fiscal year. And stepping back just for a second, we do anticipate a fund balance in the operating portion of the budget at about $1.98 million at the end of next fiscal year. That's down a little bit, but that's because we're beginning using some for capital construction. The next portion is the capital improvements. We don't anticipate too much for capital expenditure in there, just $50,000 to begin that water main design work for a following year project. Meter deposit, that's a fund where our non-owner occupants are required to pay a meter deposit to get water service. That goes into this fund, and then if they move out of that location, that's refunded to them if the meter's in good shape. So we expect the amount in to equal the amount out next year. So, let me see, unless there are any questions, that's all I had on the water utility fund. The next fund is the sewer utility fund, beginning on page 71. That's tab E. Sewer utility fund is patterned similar to the water utility. It does include not only the operation fund, but a depreciation fund and a capital improvement fund. The initiatives included in this next year's budget proposal are that disinfection, dissolved oxygen, and sludge handling, which are ongoing priorities of yours, and then the jetback replacement funding. The operation fund, again, is patterned real similar to the water utility. It does include administration, the operation of the wastewater treatment plant, the collection system, and then we do have some accounting or council collections funded from this sewer utility fund. In the operation fund, we're anticipating sewer rentals, which is what it's called, to be at about $2 million. The last rate increase in the sewer utility fund was July 1st of 2016. No rate increase is recommended for this year. As in the water fund, I guess you didn't mention it, there's no rate increase recommended in the water utility fund either. And of course, the long-term, the 2016 was a culmination of several consecutive years of sewer utility rate increases, and they were targeted to incrementally increase those rates so that you could assume a bond payment or a debt payment for the capital improvements that were included in the capital improvement program. Now, those are continuing, well, first of all, in the meantime, as you get through the years of not expending that money, there's more money generated for cash improvements. And what you'll find in here is that those capital improvements are being more refined at this time, and the first of that construction is proposed for cash funding, the disinfection requirements. So this budget includes funding to construct those disinfection requirements on the schedule that the DNR has issued to the city. So that's the next fiscal year's budget. The first, personnel services in the sewer utility operation includes the same number of people as this year, 6.1 full-time equivalents. That's 20% of our administration salaries. A wastewater superintendent, 4 plant operators, and half the funding for an administrative assistant, which is a current administrative assistant in City Hall. So the work that they do is half funded here. The capital expenditures that we anticipate at $475,000 include an annual sludge lagoon. Actually, we do it twice a year, but it's annual funding. Sludge lagoon cleaning at about $75,000, and then $400,000 for that jet vac replacement. Transfers are a large expenditure in this part of the budget. This next fiscal year's transfers include the debt payment for the plant that was built several years ago at $693,000, and then $730,000 transfer to the sewer utility capital improvements to fund that first step, the disinfection construction project. The next part of that budget is the depreciation. We do transfer $35,000 a year to that from the sewer utility revenues. It is for equipment replacement, primarily from that wastewater treatment plant upgrade of several years ago. And that, there has not been any funding expended from there for, I think, ever. And it's anticipated to be about $627,000 fund balance at the end of the next fiscal year. And stepping back once again, the fund balance in the operation fund, we're projecting at about $2.75 million at the end of this fiscal year. Now, that's all cash to be able to help fund those capital improvements that are projected and currently included in the capital improvement program. The last part of that budget is the capital improvements, and we are proposing to expend $1.16 million out of that, and that expenditure is for that disinfection requirement. The other part of that initial requirement from the DNR is dissolved oxygen levels, and we believe our current plan can handle the increase in those dissolved oxygen levels without any further capital expenditure. The other part of that funding is sludge handling design. Sludge handling is currently done in a manner that we believe is a very good way to do it. It's actually probably the cheapest way it'll ever be done, and we've benefited from that for a number of years. But the one drawback of it is there's no redundancy in it. That if we get stuck with a wet spring or a wet fall, that we can't land apply sludge, we have sludge all over the place and not enough storage space for it. So we believe that it's time to look into alternatives for sludge handling, whether they be as simple as additional storage or as more complex to go with drying and just handling, treating and handling in a whole different manner. So that would be basically the gamut of sludge handling. And it's probably time to get some redundancy worked into this plant operation. And during these capital improvement construction periods is a good time to work that in. It's not a mandated improvement. It's an improvement that we believe is necessary for an operation, a good redundant operational system. So it's included in here, at least for design. Balance, of course, in that part of the fund, the balance really is negligible because we transfer the money in, the capital project expended. That's it for the sewer utility fund, unless there are any questions.
Some of that sludge they can't take out at the landfill, can they yet, or no?
Not in the form, not in the
Another
liquid
form that we have, okay.
Right. We've tried to use it, to suggest they should use it as a soil enhancer, but it hasn't been received very well. Now, dry sludge you can. You can.
The dry stuff they can
If
take.
worse comes to worse, you can landfill dry sludge. You can
Okay.
apply dry sludge to the surface of the ground, farmland, as a soil enhancer, or you can landfill it if worse comes to worse. So if one of the options is to go to mechanically drying the sludge, storing it, get a wet spring. The problem with wet springs are, we can't get equipment on farm fields to dispose of sludge, and as soon as it dries out, there's corn in the ground. So the farmers don't want to give you time, and they shouldn't, if they have a late spring, to get on there to apply. So that's why you end up with a bunch of sludge at your plant that you can't get rid of. Now, if it can be dried and stored in that manner, and in worst case, landfill, and there would be a tonnage charge for it, but at least you could get rid of it, in some manner.
Have you guys looked at, purchasing farm ground and just leaving it open for the purposes of just allowing the city to spread it on city ground rather than?
Never,
No? Okay.
never looked into that. I think you'd find it to be terribly expensive.
Expensive, that's what I'm wondering too.
First
yeah.
of all, to buy it.
Right,
And then you're limited to the amount of nitrogen you can place on the soil. So actually, when we have ours hauled in the spring and fall, it usually has to go to a variety of different locations because
you can't continuously apply it on the same
No,
area.
you can't.
Okay.
The uptake through cropping helps, it
Right.
depletes it, so you can go back with it. But in a place, I know there are large cities do that, but they have, acres and acres of land that they have to, because it's not only nitrogen, it's phosphorus, and it's all the heavy metals that are in sludge. They're all limited on a pounds per acre basis. So we're here in the middle of ag country. I mean, we can get it on farmland all over the place. And the farmers have really worked well with the city in accepting that sludge. And that's great, it's, like I say, it's the cheapest way possible to handle sludge right now. And the city's benefited for a lot of years, but it might not continue forever.
So have we come close in the past?
We've had every tank on that plant full of sludge before, because we had a wet spring, and we had to hold it all summer long until the first corn got taken out, so we could get sludge on that land. And it's just a mess. And that was actually before we had the activated sludge process. We have about twice the sludge volume now as we had before the activated sludge process. We have the same dry tons, but activated sludge doesn't de-water. So our sludge goes out at about 3% now, where before activated sludge process, it was about 6%. So we're handling twice the amount of water to try to get rid of, try to store, try to get rid of. Before our activated sludge process, we land applied once a year. That's the way we had built the storage facility. And with the doubling of the water content, we have to go twice a year now, spring and fall.
How many gallon capacity can we store?
We can store just about 3 million gallons of water. And that's about 2,000 dry ton.
Do you know how many acres of farmland you apply the sludge to?
It runs, I think it's about 50 acres per application, something like that. So 50 acres spring, 50 acres fall.
Yeah.
In order to stay within the DNR requirements. Any other questions on that, Lisa? That's the most interesting part of the budget. Yeah, that's good. The last part of the public works budget is stormwater utility. Has an operational fund and a capital improvements fund. Our initiative for next year is Raccoon River Streambed Stabilization Project. We have a location on the Raccoon River that we need to stabilize the stream bed. And we have budgeted for it currently, and next year we're going to try to get it constructed. Charges for service in the stormwater utility. The utility fees, of course, are charged to every property in town, and they're anticipated to generate about $250,000 per year. And that fee has not changed since the establishment of the stormwater utility several years ago. We do transfer money practically annually out of this fund to the capital project streets. We do that, pretty much plan $100,000. That's to help support some of the storm sewer, the minor storm sewer construction that we do as a part of a street resurfacing project, whether it's inlet replacement or short cross pipe replacement. We did fund that two years ago, that large 3rd Street storm sewer project entirely from this fund. So it's been useful. It's generated some useful dollars for storm sewer improvement in town. We anticipate at the end of next fiscal year, we have a balance of about $654,000. So it's slowly rebuilding itself to tackle another large storm sewer project that's needed, determined to be needed. And the capital improvements fund, of course, we do fund that from the stormwater utility. We expect to expend the funds from there for that stream bed stabilization capital project. And that's a relatively simple fund. If there are any questions on that, if not, that's all that I had in public works.
That might be a record time for covering that, right?
Oh, right.
That was really good. Very concise, too.
I had a request for like a 5-minute break, and then we'll get to Laura, and I think we should be done.
For the day.
Yeah. So, all right, 5 minutes.